Welcome to the Explainer. Okay, I am absolutely thrilled to dive into this one with you today. We're going to explore a truly epic story of sporting innovation. It's the tale of a tactical empire that completely rewrote the rules of a global game, achieved a level of dominance we hadn't seen before, and then, as these things usually go, inevitably faced a rebellion. To really wrap our heads around this tactical empire, I want you to picture something completely different for a second. Recently, a female U.S. rower completed an absolutely grueling, historic solo journey across the Pacific Ocean, going all the way from California to Hawaii. I mean, this is the absolute pinnacle of isolated human endurance, right? One individual completely alone, battling the elements and pushing their body to the absolute limit. Now, contrast that solitary, grinding endurance with the ultimate collective achievement on the football pitch. Because with this tactic, we aren't looking at individual physical dominance. We're looking at collective geometry. We're talking about 11 players moving so perfectly in sync, it's literally like they share a single brain. It's a system where your physical size is entirely neutralized by the sheer power of teamwork. So here is our roadmap for today. We're going to start by moving beyond the solo journey, define exactly what tiki-taka is, look back at its golden era, break down the tactical blueprints, see how players eventually became slaves to the system, and finally, how rivals managed to defeat the Death Star. All right, part one, beyond the solo journey, the power of the collective. Moving right along into part two, defining tiki-taka, football's passing revolution. So what exactly is it? Well, tiki-taka is basically a style of play that's all about intricate, short passing, constant movement, working the ball through various channels, and, above everything else, maintaining possession. But the name itself actually has a super fascinating origin. It was popularized by a Spanish broadcaster named Andres Montes. During a live commentary of a 2006 World Cup match between Spain and Tunisia, he was watching Spain's precise passing and just blurted out, "Estamos tocando tiki-taka, tiki-taka," meaning we are playing tiki-taka, tiki-taka. And honestly, the name just stuck like glue. In practice, the whole system boils down to a few core pillars. We're talking incredibly sharp one- or two-touch passing and this constant roaming movement by the midfielders. Players are always swapping positions in these really intricate patterns. But here is the real secret sauce. Monopolizing ball possession is both an offensive and a defensive tactic. Think about it. If you literally always have the ball, you don't actually need to switch between defending and attacking. You just control the entire game. Combine that with a super high defensive line, and you slowly squeeze the life right out of the opposition. Which brings us to part three, the golden era, roots to absolute dominance. Now, this tactical empire didn't just pop up out of thin air, right? It was a massive evolution over decades. Way back in the 1930s, the German club Schalke used something called the spinning top to dominate with short passes. Fast forward to the 1970s, and Ajax and the Dutch national team introduced total football, bringing in high defensive lines and players swapping positions. Then Johan Cruyff brought those Dutch ideas over to Barcelona in the 1990s. And finally, between 2008 and 2012, Pep Guardiola took all those pieces and refined them into the absolute ultimate peak of tiki-taka at Barcelona. 14. Just let that sink in for a second. 14. Under Pep Guardiola's guidance, in just 4 years from 2008 to 2012, Barcelona won 14 titles. It's an absolutely astonishing number. And this total dominance was fueled by a once-in-a-lifetime generation of players who grew up together in Barcelona's La Masia Youth Academy. Guys like Lionel Messi, Xavi, and Andres Iniesta. Now, these were technically brilliant but often physically smaller players who just had unreal touch and vision. And perfectly timing this, the 2005 update to the offside law forced defenders to play deeper. That actually expanded the playing area and allowed these smaller, highly technical players to absolutely flourish. All right, part four, the tactical blueprint, the geometry of space. To the naked eye, it looked like this beautiful, completely improvised, fluid dance. But actually, it was highly calculated math. Guardiola utilized what's called positional play. The golden rule was the ultra-efficient use of space. Step 1, narrow the space when defending. Step 2, expand the space when attacking. Step 3 is where the real geometry kicks in. Guardiola literally painted lines on the training ground, dividing the pitch into specific zones. His rule was strict. No more than 2 players could be on the same vertical line, and no more than 3 on the same horizontal line. Finally, step 4, use a false 9 center forward who drops deep to keep the ball zipping around from totally unexpected angles. It wasn't magic, it was pure calculated geometry.
On to part 5, slaves to the system, internal fatigue.
But there was a catch. The internal toll of constantly executing this extreme geometry was just staggering. In 2013, Barcelona defender Gerard Piqué made this massive, incredibly honest admission. He said they had become so overly dependent on the tactic that they found themselves slaves to that system. Because they absolutely refused to play long balls and insisted on always building from the back, opponents started to figure out their movements. It became dangerously predictable. Teams would just close off the wings, and suddenly, Barcelona completely lacked alternative solutions. And guys, here is the absolute wildest, most profound irony of this whole story. The architect himself, he hated the label. In 2014, Pep Guardiola famously went on record saying he loathed all that tiki-taka. He literally called it rubbish and pointless. See, for Guardiola, the secret wasn't just hoarding the ball. The actual goal was to overload one side of the pitch with passes to draw the opponent in, leaving their opposite side weak and entirely exposed for a targeted attack. The endless, sterile passing just for the sake of looking pretty, that was never, ever his true vision. Finally, part 6. Defeating the Death Star, the Rebellion's counterattack. So let's look at the 2012 Champions League semifinal. The numbers here are just mind-blowing. Over 2 legs, Barcelona held a massive 73% possession and fired off 46 shots. Chelsea, on the other hand, had a measly 27% possession and just 12 shots. Yet, Chelsea advanced. No way, right? But Chelsea's manager, Roberto Di Matteo, realized something huge. You don't actually need to steal the ball to win. You just have to deny Barcelona space. By packing their defense in midfield, they basically forced Barcelona to funnel attacks harmlessly, proving that, yes, overwhelming possession could actually be defeated. Suddenly, a clear blueprint to beat the machine emerged, and managers like Jose Mourinho at Inter, Jupp Heynckes at Bayern Munich, and Diego Simeone at Atletico Madrid started executing it flawlessly. Here's how you do it. You use an incredibly compact, disciplined defense, basically parking the bus. You concede possession entirely to deny any breathing room in the center of the pitch. You use your physical size and height to punish them on corners and free kicks, because remember, tiki-taka teams are famously quite small. You strike back with swift, clinical counterattacks. And, my favorite part, something Bayern Munich mastered, you use fake pressing. You push close to attackers without actually committing, driving them away while saving all your own energy for the second half. Genius. But the definitive, almost cinematic ending to this era happened on the global stage. At the 2014 World Cup, Spain faced the Netherlands, and the Dutch manager was Louis van Gaal, the exact same man who had managed Barcelona a decade earlier and literally helped bring up the players who mastered tiki-taka. Van Gaal deployed a 5-3-2 formation, he absorbed all of Spain's pressure and then unleashed devastatingly swift counterattacks. The result? A stunning 5-1 demolition of Spain. It was their worst defeat in 64 years, and they were knocked out in the group stage. The Death Star had officially exploded. So the pure, extreme version of tiki-taka might have been dismantled. But look around at modern sports today. I mean, monopolizing possession, playing out from the back, having goalkeepers with extreme technical skill, that is all standard requirement for almost every top team now. So I leave you with this. Is tiki-taka truly dead? Or did it simply force the rest of the football world to evolve and permanently change the DNA of the beautiful game? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and next time you're watching a match, keep questioning the tactics you see out there on the pitch.